So the first thing I'd recommend you do is to roll down the windows of both the front and the back. And then when you open the doors, you'll notice there's this small nut here. That's a 7mm nut, and you need to remove that. And what that's going to do, it's going to loosen this piece right here, what allows you then to get to this panel, this pillar trim, when you need to pop it out. So I've already removed that small screw or nut that I showed you earlier, and the most important part, I'd say, is getting a putty knife and slipping in here between the rubber windowsill and the actual pillar trim, and just working it down in there. And you can slide it up some, and you'll find your first metal tab, and all you do is just kind of pull it out a little bit, slide it down a little more. Again, just take your time, don't force it too much, because those things are fragile. And there you'll see, you know, the metal tabs, and there, I've popped it all off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the door again and work this piece off. Here I've opened the door, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull on this a little bit. You can see again, it's pretty loose now, and actually I think that you see it's pretty flexible too, and there's that top tab that you don't want to bust, and bingo, pop right off. There you go. On both of my back seat trims, there was not actually a screw to be found on the inner part of the window. There is one on the back, so I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if that's a manufacturing decision or what, but one thing that is a little different about the back window is that you do have to remove this piece of weather stripping, because that's going to hold the trim in. So if you just pull it towards you, if you're sitting in the back seat, just kind of pull it with your fingers, you'll feel it pulling away from the trim itself, that pillar trim. And what's going to happen, it's actually just going to fall right off. And if I have got any kind of luck, when I go to put it back on, I'll remember how to do it. So I haven't completely removed this trim on the inside of this back seat window pillar, but I'm going to take the approach of coming in from this direction, and when I do, that rubber stripping there is either going to come off with the trim, or it's just going to fall right off. So this is what that pillar looks like from the, well, I'll give you some perspective here. It's this pillar right here. Once I popped it off, actually the weather stripping came with it, and I'm going to leave it like that, because on the other side the weather stripping came loose, and this will give me a good guide to remember how to put this stuff back on. But again, I did come in with the putty knife from this side, this angle, and I slipped it in and just kind of slid it up until I found where there was one of these tabs, and then I just kind of pushed it up, meaning the putty knife, pushed the angle forward or upwards, and then the plastic tab on this piece just pops straight out of the metal tab here. So I've already removed the small bolt or screw that goes here on the inside of the door, and so I'm going to take off this last piece of the pillar trim, and again I'm just going to keep going in the same direction I've been going, which is I'm going to go from this side in, and just take my putty knife, pop it up this way so you can see I'm pulling outwards towards me with the handle, and that's it. I think I've already popped this off, so I'm ready just to kind of wiggle this one out, and there we go. This last pillar trim, you'll also notice, has kind of a edge on it that folds around the door, so it has to come out towards the rear of the vehicle. But again, don't forget that you've got the tabs at the top of each one of these pillars, so work real slow with it. What I try to do is just kind of pull it out a little bit from the bottom, and also maybe even bend it a little bit here in the middle. And if you do that and just take your time, this will come out. You shouldn't have any problems. So there, I did get it out in one tact, and what I did, of course, was as I told you, there's this edge on this back pillar trim, so I had to kind of pull on it towards the direction of the rear of the vehicle. while at the same time kind of bowing it in the middle. And as you pull, and if you pull slowly, it'll just pop right out. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these pillar trim parts and wet sand them in my kitchen sink, actually. So I've gone to the store and purchased some 3M 600 grit wet dry sandpaper, and they also sold this trim paint, which I've never used before, and so I don't endorse it. I don't know what it's going to come out like. We'll see. What I don't like about it, it's a 1 hour drying time. I've read there's other plastic sprays that will dry in as fast as 10 minutes, but this is all they had, so this is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and skip showing you the wet sanding process, because that's going to be pretty simple, but I will show you what the end result is after I've painted these trim parts so we can see what they look like. So even though I didn't share the wet sanding actual process with you, I did want to show you kind of what the results look like. You can see that these 3 pillar trim pieces have already been wet sanded, and they're kind of dull. They have a real dull finish to them. You don't want to press down obviously really hard when you're wet sanding these things, so take your time. Do it in the sink worked great for me. Compare these pieces to the original pieces, and you can see, you know, that there's some shine that if you miss it when you're wet sanding, you know, you'll be able to find it real easy. And you know, it may have taken me 3 minutes, 5 minutes tops to do these 3 pieces here, but again, it's not about speed, it's about being careful, because if you break one of the trim tabs, you know, on the other side here, which would be really easy to do if you put too much pressure down on it, then I wouldn't say you're goofed, but you may have a piece of trim that flaps around some on you when you dry fast. Alright, so I'm going to show you the end result of one side of my car. You might have a hard time seeing them, but this is what the repainted pillar trim looks like, and quite frankly I am extremely happy with the way it came out. It's probably hard to see, but it went from having cracks and kind of some spots that were bright and shiny and some spots that were dull to really being now more consistently a matte looking finish. It took me a total of about 15 minutes to put all these pillars back on. And I'm just going to tell you, this pillar right here on both sides of the door is probably the most difficult. You get it in, at least I got it in, it felt like it was flush until I closed the door, and then you could see kind of a bow here, and that happened on both sides. And so what happens is you almost have to snap it in even further, so it kind of almost latches around the door. I bent or broke several of the tabs that I had shown you previously, and also bent a few of the tabs that go up underneath here. To be quite frank, I'm not really sure that the tabs that run up underneath this whatever this weather stripping piece is really make that much of a difference, because of the tabs that you have that lock into the metal pieces. So I guess as long as you don't break the tab here and the tab here, one of the two is going to hold this piece down. And if certainly, I think all 3 of them, one of them breaking doesn't really make a huge or material effect. But I guess once I get on the highway, we'll find that out, because I did, like I say, break 1 or 2 of the tabs. But overall, really simple project. You just got to be willing to go with the putty knife in between this weather stripping here and just take your time popping these things out. But once they're out, wet sanding them down and painting them is a snap, and the end result is something you'll be very happy with.